Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back on the updates 1.91 dev server, and it's time to have a look at the IJN's Mogami. This is the new rank 4 battle rating 5.7 top tier heavy cruiser that is coming to Japan in update 1.91, and it is the most heavily armed machine that we're going to have in the game. It has 5 sets of dual mounted 203mm guns, 4 5-inch dual mounts. It also has 4 25mm dual mounts and 2 13.2mm dual mounts. So if we look at the secondaries and the tertiaries in the form of the AA, it's not that strong. But with the 5 sets of dual 203mm turrets, it packs the biggest punch that we have in the game at this moment in time. Now, it can only do this broadsiding, because as you can see, the way that the turrets are set up in the front, you can only fire 4 guns looking straight forward. So therefore, going towards the enemy with this machine, you would have to do it at an angle in order to use all 3 sets of turrets. If you're not able to do that, then of course you are losing quite a lot of your usability. On top of this as well, it only has 1 smoke funnel. Well, it has many smoke funnels, but they all lead into one singular big smoke funnel. And what this means is, taking it out, you can pretty much shut out the power of the engines with the Mogami quite easily compared to other machines. Something I do want to point out as well is the crew of this is only 910. And if you compare that to the USA, the Atlanta, it has 623, but it is a light cruiser and significantly smaller. But if you compare it to the Hipper, which has 1,400 crew members on board, it is just dwarfed by it, The Mogami with only 910. So the survivability coming through the crew is not going to be as strong as other machines that we see in the game. So what do these 203mm pack? Well, what they pack is a decent amount of punch, and also having to purchase torpedoes again is kind of annoying, but we do what we do. So the 203s have 93mm of penetration. They have around about 8 kilos worth of explosive mass. Then you get an APBC shell, which pens 364, so enough to go through pretty much anything. And then, of course, you get a HEDF shell, which you would hope would do a little bit more damage, but of course is it's the same actually when it comes to its explosive mass. The 127mm, which are the 5-inch guns, they have HE, and then they pen 54mm, so nothing to write home about. And then the 127mm HEDF does exactly the same. You're not able to change the 25mm or the 13.2s, but I'm glad to say these aren't just tracer rounds anymore, and they actually have HEF in them, and also AP. So overall, now when it comes to the firepower of this machine, it's nice that you can get all of the modifications quickly if you require them, but it already does a ton of damage without them. The torpedoes on board, it has 24 of them, and they are set, as you can see, in sets over here of in sets of 3. So you have 3, 6, 9, 12, and then they have a reload with them. So if you take a full complement, you have 24 torpedoes, which means 12 per side, which at least for me is going to be incredibly important when dealing with other ships. I really like using torpedoes. I think they're incredibly useful in the game. I know people have little aversions to them because of the fact that they sometimes explode on the ship, but for me, the good outweighs the bad. They also, the Mogami, compared to some of its compatriots, doesn't have as much armor. So if you have a look at it, it has 65mm here, 100mm on the top, and 25 on the bottom. 140 though around the ammunition, which is incredibly important because of how large these ammunition storages and charge storages are for this machine. There's also fuel tanks protecting pretty much all of the engines, so you're going to have to go through them before you get to anything else. And then of course the transmissions in the back, keeping everything going. So the survivability through armor is good in certain areas, bad in others. So, it's good around the ammunition storage, terrible around the general, engines, but they do have some extra armor around the top of them The main problem I have with this is the fact that the engines will get knocked out easy just by hitting the smoke funnel. So there's also some armor on the main guns, but only 25 millimeters. So these will get knocked out incredibly easily compared to some other machines, such as the Hipper, which of course has 106 millimeters of armor on its main guns. So knocking out these 203s, not too hard to do compared to its compatriots. Looking at the customization, there's no camouflage, so unfortunately you can't or are not able to move towards anything with that. So overall, what you see is what you get. Now, with the Mogami and with the test cell, we can see the power of the 203 millimeters, but they have a real issue, and this is an issue that a lot of the Japanese ships have when it comes to War Thunder. So first of all, the secondary armaments. For a machine that is this big, you would want the secondary armaments to be a hell of a lot better than they are. You know, you don't have a ton of secondary armaments that you can easily rely on. Instead, you have a few 13.2s, a few 25s, and a few larger secondary guns. For me personally, I would look at something like an Admiral Hipper as a machine which has satisfactory secondary and tertiary armaments, where this is just not the case. So the first thing is it takes a while for the guns to get on targets. That's not too much of an issue. Hey up. But that's not too much of an issue, just because of where the guns are coming from and the size of them, especially since we're going to be doing this at range. The main issue comes here. So when you fire the guns, so they take 6 seconds to reach the target, maybe 7 seconds, which is okay. You know, muzzle velocity is alright. They do a ton of damage, just like a lot of the jab guns. And now we're waiting. And we're waiting. Whoops. And we're waiting. And we're waiting. And we can fire again. 7 seconds. You know, this is at 5,000 meters as well, so it's not a crazy distance. Tons of really good damage again. And we're waiting. And we're waiting, and we're waiting, and this is a common trend you see with all of the Japanese destroyers and all of the Japanese cruisers. They have really powerful guns with a ton of HE in their shells, but they have such a long reload. What ends up happening is you just half the time are sat there getting shot by something like an Atlanta or a Brooklyn. They're just pummeling you over and over and over again, you know, giving you a good dirty, and what you're just doing is just sat here hoping that your guns reload and you can get a salvo off and be as accurate as possible against that ship, which is just pumped at least 4 or 5 salvos into you because of its crazy reload rate compared to what you have. So that is the issue with this machine. It has a really nice knockout punch, right? It has a really nice 10 gun knockout punch. So if we're against a light cruiser like you see in front of you and we're able to do a ton of damage to it, e.g. that, and you know, set its ammo off, then what we can do is, you know, we can win with one hit, or we can win with a few hits. But the issue is that's not always going to happen. I'd say the majority of the time it's not going to happen, and they're going to be able to fire back. And what that means is your guns, as we talked about, don't have a lot of armor on them. Your speed is good. You have a lot of torpedoes, so you can use them to either go after ships or try and, you know, sort out little areas. You can see here that where the torpedoes are, they have a very limited arc where they can actually go. The only place where they, they have a limited arc going forward, so you can see where this one can go. It can go to around about there, and that's it. So you can shoot behind you, but the majority of the time shooting behind you is not really what you want to do, right? Instead, what you want to be doing is shooting forwards into the line of enemy fire instead of stuff where it's going backwards to it. So the guns, as I said, are slow. The guns in reload and also turn rate, so changing and acquiring different targets is going to be a problem. And let's say you miss your first salvo. Let's say you're maybe not as good at aiming as a compatriot. Well, you're just going to be sat there for 20 to 25 seconds waiting for the next salvo, hoping that you've landed up properly this time to be able to throw in shells to attack whatever ship you're firing at. So it's lovely. It's absolutely lovely that you have this hit power from this machine. The fact that, as you can see there, I've knocked out 3 turrets from that destroyer. That's more than half of its capabilities gone in an instant, with these guns. It also means that, we can target a different part of the ship and pretty much sink it in one hit, like that, because we've knocked out the rest of the guns. And it means that we can one-shot machines, as shown before against this light cruiser, and will be shown many times. But the problem is, sustained fire will eventually beat this, because all you need to do is knock out one turret on this, and then it's a hipper, right? And then it's a main gun's hipper. Then, once you've done that, and you knock out another turret, then it's no different to a lot of other light cruisers out there, which have, really big guns, which do a ton of damage. So it's not hard to limit this machine when it comes to facing other nations, because it has an unfortunate issue with it, which is, of course, the fire rate. But the question is, do you bet on the boxer who has that killer punch, or do you bet on the person who has the endurance to survive? Because sometimes that one punch man, he'll win. He'll probably win quite a lot of the time, especially if the endurance man makes a mistake. But it's not going to happen all the time. And I think at the end of the day, it's probably going to come down to playstyle differences. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.
I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, John Ryman, Joseph Anders, Martinez, Mopar 1969, Moxie, Super Cacti, Uyans Terry, and Elove Goats, and of course Seductive Trash Can, for supporting the channel.